This is the Manga Xanadu Manga Dome podcast. I am your host, Laurie Henderson. Join me on this journey into the world of manga, where a river of reviews flow through caverns of commentary down into the latest news. Welcome to the Manga Dome. Episode 38, Yen Plus Retrospective, Wish Granted List. Since there were no real manga releases to speak of, this week I'm going to do a Wish Granted list, the manga I got for Christmas. I start off with Chi Sweet Home Volume 9 from Vertical. I love the funny and sometimes bittersweet story of a kitten growing up. Chi is so cute and the cast of animal characters around her is great. Sherlock Bones Volume 1 is from Kodansha and has been on my radar since before it was released. Yay, hubby and kids! Same goes for World War Blue from Seven Seas. I just have to see what the console wars personified look like, even if it makes my oldest daughter moan. Finally, my parents gave me Alice in the Country of Hearts, the Clockmaker story. Yay for Amazon wishlist so they know what to buy even if they don't get it. Julian was one of my favorite characters from Alice in the Country of Hearts, so I'm looking forward to reading his story. VizManga.com update. Over at VizManga.com, the top 10 list as of December 17, 2013, still has Shonen dominating and new releases pushing back as well. Yu Yu Hakusho has become comfortable at number 1 with Volume 9 taking the top spot. Right behind it is Skip Beat Volume 20, the big shoujo backlist title lately. Black Cat Volume 16 comes in at number 3, while One Piece Volume 69 surges up 6 to come in at number 4. Nisekoi Volume 6 returns at number 5, pushing Demon Love Spell Volume 5 back 1 to number 6. New release Degenki Daisy Volume 13 debuts at number 7, with the new gimmick Volume 5 falling back 1 to number 8. Magi Volume 3 takes the biggest fall as it drops 8 to come in at number 9, and Naruto Volume 63 falls another 2 to number 10. New shonen releases are showing they have what it takes to hold on, while only the backlist shoujo, Skip Beat, shows it has what it takes to go against the shonen giants in the top 5. Degenki Daisy doesn't do too bad as it debuts alongside On Again, Off Again charter Demon Love Spell. The New York Times bestseller list. Over at the New York Times bestseller list for the week ending December 21st, 2013, Christmas has made a bit of a dent in its charting titles. Attack on Titan Volume 1 returns to the top spot, moving up 1 to number 1. Right behind it is Attack on Titan Volume 2 at number 2, which is followed by last week's number 1, One Piece Volume 69 at number 3, falling 2 spots. Fairy Tail Volume 33 debuts at number 4, and is followed by Attack on Titan Volume 3 at number 5, moving up 3. Demon Love Spell Volume 5 moves back 1 to number 6, while Black Butler Volume 1 returns after a few months' absence to number 7. Naruto Volume 63 moves back 2 to number 8, Maximum Ride Volume 7 continues to hover at number 9, and Attack on Titan Volume 9 falls 7 to land at number 10. One Piece is really doing well this time. It's held out for 3 weeks and all in the top 5. Attack on Titan's 4 titles are no surprise, but the return of Black Butler kind of is, though it probably shouldn't be. The Bishonen Butler with a dark side has now hit the list for its 35th week. Not bad for a title that came out over 2 years ago. This week I welcome back Alex Hoffman of the Manga Widget Blog. This time we take a look back at Yen Plus, Yen Press's anthology magazine, whose final issue came out this month. As subscribers to both the print and digital editions, we have some things to say about what we thought Yen Press did right and maybe not so right.
Yen Plus actually came onto the scene about the same time that I was really starting to get into manga. If I remember correctly, my blog started up fairly close to when Yen Plus was originally printed. That first issue, I think it was July 29th of 08, remarkably close to the same time when I started blogging. So I picked up a subscription, one out of curiosity because Yen Press was kind of an unknown to me. I was mostly reading things from Del Rey at the time. Wow, that sounds old, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I knew about Tokyo Pop and because they had Love Hina, and I knew about Del Rey because they had Negima, and that was like basically the extent of my comics knowledge. So that tells you where I started out at. But I just remember Yen Press being super neat because it was like one half was like the American comics and then the other half was the Japanese comics. And it seemed so cool to me. It's like such an ideal way to consume comics. But it was pretty pricey for what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't realize this at the time. You know, I didn't really understand that this anthology was expensive. I mean, I knew that it was expensive. I assumed that all of the ones that were in print were the same price, when in reality, Shonen Jump and Shoujo Beat were about half the price. Part of the reason why I think that the anthology didn't do as well as it probably could have. The tie-ins that they had were really neat. If I remember correctly, it started out with Maximum Ride being one of the big sellers. The Japanese cover was the first cover image for Soul Eater, and then the flip side was for Maximum Ride.
Yeah, Maximum Ride was their big name.
And honestly, I picked it up because of Maximum Ride. For a very short amount of time, I was a youth librarian in Fairfield County, Ohio. I knew that property very well because it was one of our most popular middle childhood, young adult series at the time. It was that and Harry Potter, basically. Everyone was gaga over those books. So that's what caught my attention, because I picked up that first issue at the newsstand and then subscribed later.
I knew about Yen Press because I was going to San Diego Comic-Con at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to their first panel in 2007, and then I went again in 2008 where they announced Yen Plus, and they gave away the first issue there, so I didn't have to pay for mine.
One of the things I think that was a huge barrier to entry for me for the Viz anthologies was that I'm kind of one of those people that likes to start a story at the beginning.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time jumping in the middle and figuring things out as I go. It's one of the reasons why I've had such a big problem with One Piece, even though the volumes that I've read I've really loved. I just, we're into volume 752 now. Like, I can't pick up number 52 and read that and be like, okay, because my library, we would stock these anthologies, so we had a copy of Shoujo Beat, we had a subscription to Shonen Jump, and I'd pick it up and I'd leaf through it and go, well, I can't do this. I can't read this. Who is this? What is this giant cat lizard thing? I couldn't handle the anthologies, but starting fresh was really a unique experience. One of the selling points for me for the anthology from Yen. So that first issue, I mean, obviously free is a great price, but what did you think of it?
I remember reading through it in our hotel room because, we got it, we came back, and we were kicking back that night, paging through it. And I remembered liking Hiragashi.
Okay, yeah.
And I think I kind of liked Nabari no O, but I hated Soul Eater and I hated Sumomomo right from the beginning.
Oh my gosh, Sumomomo.
Yeah.
It's one of Ed Chavez's favorite books, and I just despise it. It's not funny, it's just weird, I just don't like it.
I hated the art. Oh,
yes,
it was so bad.
All the reasons that you mentioned I was just like, oh, this is wretched. I was like, there's no way I can read this. But I'm surprised that you didn't like Soul Eater. What was your aversion to it?
I don't know. It just didn't click with me. I just didn't really like the main characters. I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It was very much comics for boys to the extreme.
Yeah.
This is really strange. I mean, I really like Soul Eater not much more than Soul Eater.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
But I like Soul Eater not a lot more because I love the world building. I love the creativity of the world. I just don't like the dynamic between the main characters as much as the other shonen that I read.
Mm-hmm.
But that first issue was really interesting. So I think my favorite titles out of the first issue were actually Pig Bride and Soul Eater. I kind of like Nabari no O. It was very much in the age of the emo kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's kind of like a shut-in the sense that I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'd rather just like sit in a corner and be by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole mentality was finally starting to die off in high schools across the country for good reason, because those kids were miserable and it wasn't that cool to do. The whole ninjutsu elemental business was neat, but the main character just drove me nuts.
Yeah, I think I liked it because I thought it had potential, so I was willing to give it a chance. I didn't like Bamboo Blade at the beginning, but I read some later volumes and turned out to absolutely love it. So I'm not sure why I didn't like it at the beginning.
So one of the ways that I read this, I didn't read the thing front to back every single time. Sometimes I'd let them pile up and then I'd read them all and go. But at the end, right as the anthology is starting to get ready to go to digital only, I was probably reading Time and Again, Hero Tales, Maximum Ride, Night School, Pig Bride. I wasn't reading everything. I read the first 3 chapters of Bamboo Blade and said, this is awful. I just never read it again. I just flipped right past it. I never read it. And so I had all those anthologies. I had every single one, and I think I read the first 3 of Bamboo Blade, and that was it. Which is terrible. I never gave it a shot, really. I just kind of was like, okay, no, I'm not reading that.
Yeah, I think I picked it up at like around volume 6 or 7, and that's when the story actually started going somewhere, and the characters were just interesting. I'm all like going, wow, why did I stop reading this? And it's just like, well, I haven't gone back and read, but I read to the end and loved the end.
I haven't revisited it. One of the things I'm looking at right now is some of these older titles that are in Yin's back catalog that I really liked but never really took anywhere. They bought out, what was the name of that publisher? It's like
Ice Cube, something like that. Yeah,
something like that.
Korean.
It was all these Korean titles, and so 13th Boy, I believe, is one of those titles.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Pig Bride, of course, is one of those titles. Now, I think they licensed that after they bought out Ice, but it was still one of their flagship Korean titles. I absolutely adored the first volume of Pig Bride, and I really, really liked the first volume of 13th Boy, and then I never read another volume. I was like, I'm definitely going to follow this all the way to the end. I love it to death. Never looked at it again. I was just overwhelmed by the amount of content we had right as the bubble was bursting.
Yeah.
There's so much.
I have Pig Bride volumes 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Oh, the wretched 4th volume.
Yes, that you can't find anywhere, or they want to charge you an arm and a leg to get a hold of.
At a used bookstore the other day, I found a copy of Planetes 4.5. This book is worth $40. I bought it for $3. And I already have a copy. I don't know what to do with it. I think I'm going to give it away. I honestly do. I mean, what am I going to do with it? But I was like, I'm leaving this here to get thrown into a burn bin or a trash compactor because no one's going to buy it by itself as the 4.2 volume. Oh,
you'd be surprised. There are people who they'll piecemeal the series until they get it all.
I could never be one of those people. I'm like a completist. I go on eBay and look for a completed series or most of the ones. It always blows my mind when someone has volumes 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 12. And they're selling that on eBay. And it just makes my head explode because what? Why didn't you get all the ones in the middle?
Well, sometimes you do get the ones in the middle, and then you sell those or trade those off, and what you're selling is what you have left.
Yeah. My experience with Japanese comics and Korean comics, since we're talking about Yin Press, is almost very solitary. I came into these comics without a cohort, so it was just me. So I never had anybody to share with or talk about. The only comics I was able to share with people are comics that were already part of their interests. So I was able to share Cross Game with a friend who really likes baseball. That was the majority of it. That's why blogging and Twitter were such positive things for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't have anyone around me who reads manga, except my kids.
I went to a small rural school for college, and there was no one that was really into it besides maybe a few kids that weren't near me or interested in talking about it publicly.
Yeah. So. What did you think of Night School? That's one of the first of their original English language books.
Right. I love Night School. I absolutely adored it. Svetlana Chemkova, is that how you say it?
I think so.
I just love her art style. I love the way that she illustrates. I thought Night School was really moody and really creepy and really cool.
Had a lot of good humor, too.
Yeah, it was dramatic and it was funny. It was a really neat series. Again, one of those books that I own volume 1. I read chapters as they came out in the anthology, but I never picked up volumes after that, which I really should have. This was a fantastic book.
Oh, I had to pick up the volumes because I wasn't getting it any other way. But yeah, I agree. I loved Night School, and I love Svetlana's artwork. It's great.
And one of the things that's kind of odd about these books was that they read better collected. I feel that way anyway.
Yeah.
I felt
a lot of these read better collected. Like Jack Frost, just chapter by chapter didn't work, but when you read it as a full volume, then it was like, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of huge hulking guys with digitally assisted drawing, their giant muscles, and shooting each other and blowing each other up, and I'm like, this is so weird. And then when you put it all together, it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense in that kind of like acid trip sort of way. You know?
I saw it as a ripoff of Hellsing.
Yeah, that's one of the things I kept on thinking. I was like, this reminds me a lot of Hellsing.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few really popular Korean comics that are just that same style. Like Black God has this very similar artistic style. Mm-hmm. That's a little more subdued, and they were able to get that past volume 6 or wherever Jack Frost is now, and I think they published the whole series. But
yeah, Jack Frost is up to 8.
Okay, they've been working on it, but it hasn't been one of their more popular series.
No.
Despite it being published in the anthology.
And it was getting 2 chapters a shot as it got towards the end.
Yeah, that's true. I think partially because they were trying to fill out the digital anthology, which is kind of weird. So they switched from this print anthology, and then almost exactly 2 years after its inception, they decided to go digital only. Mm-hmm. And this was like ages before Viz decided to take Shonen Jump digital only, and the Crunchyroll service was like a twinkling in someone's eye. It wasn't even like Crunchyroll was still illegal at that time. So it went online only. Being a customer of completely the print version and then switching to the digital, I actually had a lot of problems with the digital format. Mostly because it was like squirreled away in some back corner of the internet. Mm-hmm. Like, it was very hard to actually access the comics and read them. There's no easy way to get to them, and I'm sure that's because they wanted to not get them posted on aggregator sites.
Right.
But it was such a pain to read these comics. They went into this digital realm. They didn't get a lot of these Japanese titles, and so it became more and more original English language titles. Yep. Which were fine. I mean, some of them were really, really good, but some of them weren't really good.
Yeah, I became a subscriber with the digital when it went digital, because at $2.99 a month, I could just say, fine, take it out of my PayPal. I won't even see it.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter.
That was one of the weird things, though. Like, you had to have a PayPal account to pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that really limited their audience, because a lot of the kids that were probably picking up the book in newsstands
didn't have a PayPal account.
Didn't have a credit card or a PayPal account, right? And it had to create a repeating subscription transaction thing.
Yeah.
You have to have a PayPal account to do that. You can't just
You can't do a one-time payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember a lot of people did complain when Yen Press announced that. There are a lot of people going, but I don't have a PayPal account. I can't get one. My parents won't do this for me, Yeah. And, I mean, you couldn't help but feel sorry for them, because the best way they could do it was save their allowance and pick it up on the newsstand.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I continue to forget, and it continues to amaze me about the market that these comics are in. Comics discovery, by and large, for the manga market is in the bookstore.
Yep.
Like, it was in the Borders, and now it's in the Barnes & Noble. I mean, it's been ages since I actually went into a bookstore and spent money on comics. I'd use Amazon. Now, granted, and I can kind of hear my wife laughing at me in the background, I'm still going to use bookstores a lot, but I mean, I'm not walking into a Barnes & Noble and dropping $100 on comics like I used to.
Yeah.
And I think that experience was formative, and I keep on forgetting that not everyone can use Amazon.com. Mm-hmm. I'm so used to the books being delivered by Santa's little elves 2 days after I click yes on the little box on my computer screen. And removing Yin Plus from bookstores And swirling it away in this very hard to access package certainly didn't help it at all.
Yeah, I'm amazed it lasts the 2 years it did. Because, I mean, its Japanese side dropped down to, you'd have at least one, maybe two series, and then all the rest were either their Korean or U.S.-made comics.
I think it was like Yatsuba and maybe K-On! I think that was it.
And for a while they had High School of the Dead, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
They did like the first 12 chapters of that, and they did that in color as well.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, although like at that point I think there was probably a series of 3 or 4 months when I was paying the subscription and wasn't reading it. I didn't want to be bothered with it. It's the reason why I still have a Crunchyroll subscription, because I forget about these things. At one point I was like, finally, no, I can't. I'm not going to keep on paying for this. I'm not reading the comics. There's nothing that I want to see. Like, they didn't have the titles that I was really interested in, and they didn't add new titles to it because I think they could tell that it wasn't performing as well as they wanted to. And I'm sure they would spin it now as a wonderful success, but I'm not.
It's a great marketing tool.
Right. And I think anthologies have always been a really great marketing tool. And in Japan, that's the way they work, right? If I remember correctly, these anthologies are at cost or they're a bit of a loss leader, I guess. And then the really excited fans will pick up the collected volumes, and that's where the publisher makes money.
Yeah, they're like newspapers. You know, you buy it, you read it, you toss it, and if you really like it, you go out and buy the collected.
Yeah. In the United States, it was just so hard to justify throwing it away, you know?
I have every single one of my Shonen Jump still. Every single one. And,
you know, it was just because the subscription was just so much more expensive. Like, when, you know, those books in Japan, you're spending like, what, $2 or $3? If you subscribe to Yen Plus, you're paying like $4. But if you're buying it in the newsstand, you're paying a full $10 for that thing. You're paying like $8.99. At that point, you're buying it because it is what it is. You're not buying it because it's cheap, disposable entertainment. You're buying it because you want a printed anthology. And I think that's a much harder sell than a paperback book. Yeah, anthologies never really made it in the U.S. I mean, I know some regular comic publishers tried it, and they didn't see the same success either. I think a lot of that has to do with the difference in scale when it comes to to be blunt, the size of the country. You know, Japan's tiny. Yeah, but even with the size, you have to think Japan has a lot more people who read. That's true. And for us, you know, if you're trying to ship this thing from New York to LA, it's a much bigger cost compared to shipping it from Tokyo to, you know, some provincial town. Even then, you know, just the scale is so much smaller. And you're right, you know, the comics industry as a whole has a much smaller draw than in Japan. And so it just makes this kind of publishing not profitable, and it's not even a really great advertising tool because it's so expensive. Yeah, that's probably why everyone has decided that digital is an okay thing to do, because it's a lot cheaper to distribute. Yeah, that's true. As long as you build the website, you know, and pay for the servers. Yeah. I'm not a very big fan of the phrase digital native, because I'm not sure that actually is a thing. But those darn kids are picking up their comics for the first time at aggregator sites now. Like, where are they learning about these comics? It's online. You know, I don't think most kids are walking into Barnes & Noble and saying, oh, that looks neat, and picking up a book. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but I think that the majority is, you know, these online aggregators. Well, I mean, you also got to think a lot of bookstores have closed. A lot of kids don't have a bookstore to go and explore. They have to go online. Yeah, for us, it was, you know, the local Walden's Books in the mall, and those have all closed. So, yeah, if you're not around a big box... we didn't have a Barnes & Noble by us for, like, 5 years. We just got one within the last 5 years, and I've been here for 16. I think the Borders crash is kind of, like, symptomatic of what's happened with manga. You know, we're starting to see a regrowth now, you know, in 2013 when the market crashed in 2008. And Borders going out of business, I'm sure, played a part in some of this anthology moving to digital as well. Yeah. I did like the anthologies because they were a product that could be... It was a way for libraries to capture the youth audience in a way that maybe they couldn't otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these anthologies were, you could check them out at the library. So from my experience, kids really liked them. They read them to pieces. Our little library with a really low circulation had 2 subscriptions to Shonen Jump because the first one would get destroyed.
Yeah.
Immediately. They'd have like 50 holes, all these kids would check it out, and then the 50th kid's like missing the first half of the book and the last half, and these anthologies were a way for kids to really get access to these comics in a place that didn't have internet, really.
What did you think of Yen Press's choice of going for adapting YA novels?
Part of it is because Yen Press is owned by Hachette.
Yeah.
Or is a part of Hachette Book Group. So they're exploiting their intellectual property, which from a business standpoint, it makes perfect sense. You've got kids that are interested in the Twilight novel. Why don't you try to get them to buy the Twilight comic book as well?
Which they did.
Which, yeah, they were pretty happy to do that. They had, for a small amount of time before those people grew up and started reading smuttier things, they had a license to print money.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, and I can't fault them for that. But I think that the result has been fairly mixed. For me personally, I really liked Night School, which was kind of like its own original content.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like Daniel X. I started to hate Maximum Ride after a while. Not that that's the fault of the anthology or the comics creator. I think I just started to hate the series because it's what it was. There's some really great content, like Infernal Devices and Soulless were both really smart. I like those a lot. Some of the others, not as good. Unfortunately, I didn't like Witch and Wizard, even though I really like Night School.
Yeah, I like Svetlana's work, but I really didn't like the story for Witch and Wizard. I kind of like Daniel X. I like the sci-fi theme to it.
It's one of those what if God was one of us kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has what seems to be infinite power.
Yeah.
Probably actually just the fault of the source material.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel like it was really developed very well. I think these worked a lot better as books.
Yeah, it seems they changed the way they did their books, because Maximum Ride has just been one continuous series, even though it's broken up into several different books, right?
Right.
But Daniel X and Witch and Wizard, they changed it so that it was like one book was one volume.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So they must have condensed a lot to get, or those books must have been pretty thin.
Because they were, I see. So they're crushing all of that content into one
manga volume. Yeah.
Instead of just letting it run free form like Maximum Ride, which I can't really remember how the content in Maximum Ride links up to the book series, but the comic had space to breathe, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as long as a major book publisher like Hachette has these YA titles and they think that they have an audience for them, I think they're always going to be printing them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how well they're going to do, but I'm sure they're doing well enough. I didn't, which one was it? Didn't Soulless end up on the bestseller list for a while?
Yeah, Soulless made it to both the New York Times bestseller and they made it 1 month on the Nielsen Top 20.
And I think that it just goes to show you that obviously there is a market there, and people are willing to look at these comics because they're related to the properties that they really like. I think, as long as it works, I'll read good fiction. I'm not really concerned where it comes from. And I really liked the collected versions of like Soulless and Infernal Devices that I've read so far.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Soulless. Soulless is just a lot of fun.
Unfortunately, Soulless is done. They only did 3 volumes.
Yeah. I really liked it. It was campy enough and scary enough and cool enough it just hit a lot of buttons.
And I loved Rem's art. Her art was really good too.
Art was beautiful and it was real smart. And I think the books are the same way. I haven't read the books. I don't think I ever will.
I follow someone on Twitter and they really liked the books. So, her only complaint was that they made Alexis look too good.
I see. the Twilight heroine problem in the Twilight comics as well. She looked glittery and glitzy and not at all like the character from...
Mm-hmm.
There's not really an actual description of Bella. Is it Bella? Yes.
Bella, yeah.
I'm showing my lack of... I've even seen these movies, but it shows you how much I was paying attention.
I've only seen them with riff tracks on them.
That's probably the best way to watch them.
Yeah.
Well, I did go see that first movie with my wife, girlfriend at the time. And then I remember like reading the first like couple chapters of the book and realizing that she never describes herself. Like you don't actually know what she looks like. You know what Edward looks like to a T. But it's a way for readers to put themselves in her shoes. But overall, I think that the titles that Yin has are good for the market that they're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily that market, but someone is there publishing for that market, which is good. And as long as Therme Rome keeps on coming out, you have no complaints from me.
Oh, yes. I love that series.
And Bride's Story, too.
Yes.
You know?
Both of those made my gift list for this year.
This is something that I talked about in my 2013 retrospective, but there's a little bit more Lux publishing this year.
Mm-hmm. Definitely going more for the hardcovers and the limited editions.
Right, and I think that's like Sunny from Viz. I mean, it seems like every publisher's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's a sign that we're finally growing up. Or the people that are spending money are growing up, I can't tell.
They have more disposable income.
Yes, we got out of school and got jobs.
Yep.
Going back to Yin Press, I think that's part of their anthology problem. Kids had disposable income, but they didn't have $9 to spend on Yin Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they didn't have enough time to build a big audience to switch over to digital and have those people be able to make that change.
Yeah, I think that's probably why they went to a lot more of the supernatural romances, because those are made for 16 and up. So you've got kids who can get PayPal accounts, who probably do have at least part-time jobs, that could go ahead and get that anthology.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It may have been by design. It also may have just been the content that they could actually license and publish.
It's also content they could guarantee wasn't going to be pirated because you couldn't scanulate it.
Yeah.
No one else had it.
Yeah, they were the only ones that had it, which I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Delivering value to the marketplace is something that you can really make a digital subscription service really, really popular, but not in the way that they produced it. If they wanted to have that paywalled kind of content, which I mean, perfectly fine to have, it just has to be very, very easy to access.
Yeah, and at the time, none of the digital programs were up to that point yet. Not like it is now.
You couldn't put in your $5 for a manga subscription at Crunchyroll and be able to access all the content.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other thing that I really didn't like about the digital Yen Plus is you only got a certain amount of the content. So you were actually under some amount of pressure to read that content when it came out, because once it was gone, it was gone. You could never get it back.
Yeah, that's towards the end. I would forget. And then I'd look at the calendar and go, oh crap, I'm going to run out. So I have to quickly pull it up and try and read it before it expires.
Yeah. You're praying that there's like a delay of some kind so you can finish up the... Yeah.
I got to hurry up and read this. Come on, just give me a little more time.
And that's not the way I like to consume comics. I like to ruminate about them and consider what's going on. Did I like that? What did I think about it? And being under a timetable made it a lot more frustrating for me. I had to kind of consume it in a way that I didn't want to.
Yeah, I got to be the same way, where it's just like I missed a whole issue and didn't even realize it. Yeah. And I'm just like looking at this going, I don't need this kind of pressure. I have enough pressure in my life. I don't need it from my comics too.
I don't really want to be planted in front of my computer screen having to read this, otherwise I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
I just don't. That wasn't my idea of a good time. And there was a lot of promise, but there wasn't a lot of... They didn't really deliver on that promise, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's probably why it's now gone.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you have to salute them for taking a chance.
Yes.
Because an anthology wasn't a sure thing. It wasn't even close to a sure thing.
Yeah, because at that time, Shonen Jump was the only one that had succeeded, because Raijin before it, they tried, and they went down too, so.
Viz had its original anthologies as well, or wasn't? Well, they weren't anthologies, they were more like magazines. It was all the flipped content.
Yeah, that was the Animericas.
Yeah. And that went down in flames. So it just took a lot of work to get an anthology to really work like Viz did it, and I just don't think that Yin found the space that they needed.
You had to have the titles that people wanted to have every month.
Right.
That's probably why
Naruto.
Naruto, One Piece, Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah, all of those.
At the beginning, it was all big titles that people wanted, and that's why they were able to keep people coming back.
Right.
And they're all long titles.
Read these titles, and then, I got this for the Naruto, and now I'll read everything else in here too, since I have it.
Yeah, that's what I did. I picked it up because I wanted to read. It wasn't even One Piece I wanted to read. I think maybe it was Shaman King or Yu Yu Hakusho because of the anime, and then it's just like started reading the others and go, okay, this is cool. I'm getting a bunch of stuff I actually like.
Yin Plus never really had that. I mean, they had Soul Eater, which I believe was really popular with the online community, like the folks that were reading scans.
Mm-hmm.
And they picked up Pandora Hearts in 2009.
Yep.
Like in that May edition.
And Black Butler. That was another
Black
one.
Butler, yes.
But they graduated those from the.
They did, yeah.
Actually, I think they left when they went digital. They couldn't get them online.
Right. They couldn't continue to publish them because they couldn't get the digital rights.
Yep.
At that time, Japan wasn't really considering digital to be a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the way that they do now, 3 years later. It seems like it's been a long time, but in reality, a lot of things have really changed in the past year.
Yep.
As far as digital content is concerned. 3 years ago, you couldn't get a copy of a manga on a Kindle. Now you can get, basically Viz's entire catalog.
Yeah, and you can get all of Kodansha.
Mm-hmm.
And Yen, I think, is on there too. I don't know how far they go, though.
We're moving into digital full speed ahead. I'm still waiting for Banana Fish to end up on digital.
Well, the way Yen is putting out their backlist, it's going to show up sooner or later.
I think that they would have reprinted it by now. I would hope. They're going back and reprinting Monster, so maybe there's some hope for me. But I've got the first 3 volumes of Banana Fish. Absolutely adore it.
I'm sure you're going to see it. You're going to see it in digital before you see it in print. Because they brought back Basara. They've brought back Boys Over Flowers. All of these old series from the early 2000s, late 90s.
Yeah, Boys Over Flowers. That's one I really need to read. I'm telling you, I'm not very interested in Naruto.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in Banana Fish. So I'm maybe not your typical guy comics viewer. Well, I guess from my perspective, Yen Plus did some really cool stuff, but ultimately didn't do enough cool stuff, and they couldn't capture a big enough audience. I think that's probably where they failed.
Yeah, it was a good idea. It got people really excited at the beginning, but I don't think they had enough anchor titles to really bring people in and keep them.
Yeah, I agree. They tried to create their own anchor titles,
Mm-hmm.
but it just didn't, they tried to anchor with Pandora Hearts, they tried to anchor with Soul Eater, they tried to anchor with Black Butler,
Mm-hmm.
and it worked for a certain number of people, but that switch to digital
It just killed them.
Mm-hmm.
Not being able to get anything on the Japanese side really probably lost them a lot of subscribers.
Yeah, and all of the subscribers that just couldn't pay using PayPal.
Yep. Thank you for listening to the Manga Xanadu Manga Dome podcast. You can find links to the stories and books discussed here in the show notes at manga.jdragononline.com. You can email me with any questions at xanadu@jdragononline.com or leave a comment on this post. Rate me on YouTube and follow me on Twitter at Manga Xanadu, all one word. Until next time, farewell from the Manga Dome.